Pandora it is, full of all sorts of people, diverse as can be. How then can one try to stand out among the crowd, to brave the spotlight? Zero still fears it. No face or recognition, hides himself away. How then can he hope, envisioning victory, overcoming fear? A self-projection, with his hopes given some form, they would carry him. And here we will ask, can you beat Borderlands 2? Only Unforeseen. For the unfamiliar, Zero's action skill makes him invisible while leaving a hologram of himself for 6 seconds. He also gains a damage buff for a single hit that has an inverse association with the amount of time left on the skill. If you fail to trigger it before the duration runs out, you get nothing. By itself, it can't do anything. He has a separate skill called Unforeseen, though, that causes the hologram to detonate when the skill ends. Of course, you don't start with it, so this is me prepping for the run by farming for experience in Digistruct Peak. I would normally farm in the Fight for Sanctuary DLC, but I got a few suggestions to come here, and it seems like it goes by faster. If absolutely nothing else, it's a change of scenery. Anyways, while Zero figures out how to properly perform this XP farm, let's cover the rules for the run. I can only deal damage via Unforeseen, unless it's otherwise impossible. You probably know exactly the turrets that I'm talking about. As a general rule, bar is disallowed. NPC and or environmental damage is fine, because Zero's too shy to ask for the other Vault Hunters to stop. Similarly, using unique gear is a bold move. Far too bold for him to handle at the moment. He's working on himself, but he's got a long way to go on his confidence. Should he accidentally violate one of the rules given, he'll have to run home in shame, by way of saving and quitting the map to reload the area. For anyone else that wants to perform said farm, basically just stand vaguely here and get the skags to jump after you. Reload the area if you have a spitter spawn, and don't let them knock you off. It seems like you need to move closer to the main area to re-aggro some of them. As far as I can tell, the first 4 skags are random. The 5th seems to always be rabid, which is worth a hefty chunk. And the next 2 will be spitters, meaning you need to reload or simply perish, whichever's faster. As a side note, it appears that only one skag will come over to the spot at a time. If you want them to pursue you faster, wait until they're nearby to get onto the platform. It'll give less time for the other to retreat. Anyways, I started my adventure by finally getting the first level of the skill that I needed, and at level 16, confronting Claptrap's bully, Mong. It would be the first step in rehabilitating Zero's self-image. It would be a long journey. I mean, the poor bastard literally calls himself Zero. He thinks so little of himself as if he's nothing at all. He imagined himself succeeding so hard, though, that Knuckle Dragger was shocked to his core. He called in reinforcements that couldn't even begin to handle these sick dance moves, and for the first time in his life, there was a chance. There was a hope that one day he could be half as cool as the image within his mind. Some lady keeps calling me to tell me what to do, and despite my newfound confidence in this victory, telling her no doesn't seem like an option. I follow Claptrap as instructed, and then I'm asked to clear out an area for a gentleman and scholar. This would be the first time I would encounter ranged enemies. The thing about the imagination is that it doesn't stretch very far in the physical realm. This is to say that the range on Unforeseen is abysmal. You can't really place your hologram wherever and expect results. Ranged enemies will almost universally run away from you in mid-range. They do also have melee attacks, and you can bait them out by standing incredibly close to them. If you can work out the distance your hologram is sent out, you can place it more or less on enemies, and will stand still trying to kill it until they die. If you really think about it, it's the enemy's aggression that kills them. I'm merely present, and their attempts to end my life are their own undoing. So while I may be supplying the means, it is their own choice. Those that live by the blade are destined to get violently exploded by an advanced hologram of a futuristic ninja, as the saying goes. So really, I'm not doing anything. By technicality, this is another pacifist run. Sort of. I followed up, though, as Claptrap apparently has more bullies that he would like for me to handle. The first 2 he'd like me to see would be a guide. They oozed with confidence. Their booming voices would shatter any silence, an ability that I envied. I appreciate Claptrap's optimism regarding my capabilities in handling his next bully, but as you can see, the level difference is already wearing thinner than one would hope. Despite this, I did actually spend more time taking care of his compatriots than the big man himself. While most enemies die in one hit, I have to wait for a full cooldown of 15 seconds. A time so seemingly short until you have to wait for it for nearly every enemy. Sometimes multiple times, should you miss. I feel myself growing stronger. Not physically, but emotionally. At the peak of my power, though, the lady calls me to inform me of my next move. Here, I felt conflicted. I was still doing her will, but I got a free car for my efforts. I couldn't use it to damage things, lest I return a damaged vehicle, but it would allow me to travel more expeditiously. Was I weak for following her? Was I opportunistic for gaining goods for the services I've rendered? A question to be sure. He carried me to a place where another person began giving me orders. First was to go rescue a man that was being brutally beaten to death. I tried to assist, but did little damage. This man was described as both bad and ass. Negative names to mean of poor quality, and yet he was so durable. Such spirit built into a single person. Something I hoped to emulate, but would have to first defeat. Sensing my weakness, the locals got involved. I continued trying to handle the situation, but to no avail. The creatures dubbed bullies would be my salvation. Kind and caring. Perhaps I'd judged them too harshly. After assisting me, the local legend... No. Hero. No! Messiah! My personal messiah. simply left. Their work finished. Unfortunately, it was too late. Apparently, discharging terrifyingly high voltage atop the person you're attempting to rescue has fairly detrimental results. I was then told to seek out some candy from the locals. Using my incredible detective skills, I found the man carrying around a canister of it. Definitely not just the first guy I killed by happenstance. Totally on purpose. Yeah, let's go with that. Roland was telling me to kill even more of them, though, and if I'm ever going to stand up for myself, I need to stand now. Roland, I don't want to.
I'm being attacked.
Listen, man, you can't be like that. I'm just trying to set my boundaries, and you need to respect... He hung up on me. I passed it off to the guy asking about it, and went to help the locals, when my game crashed. Repeatedly. Every time I tried to see Scooter, it crashed. I've never had that issue before. I verified the game files, tried messing with settings, I ended up just uninstalling the HD texture pack, and it worked great. So if the game looks worse now, then I'm sorry. I honestly couldn't really tell much of a difference. If I'm going to stand up to Roland, I'll need to find him first. And I am not just doing that because Scooter told me to. I guess I should have asked him to clarify some things, though, because Roland was nowhere to be seen. I danced into a cutscene where I found this lady, unwilling to bust a move. It was so bad that she nearly died from cringing at my attempts to socialize. Apparently she invited other people to do so, and try as I might, they spent the majority of their time here interacting with her. What made it so different? What was I doing wrong? I had to discover their secrets. It was for this reason that I would follow her every order. It was in no way related to my complete lack of ability to make my own choices. I was to meet with a woman who could get me another car. I need only get some of the parts. More than a fair trade. Such generosity I hadn't known on this planet. Is this what it felt like to be on the other side of things? Receiving instead of always giving? This is what I thought before repeatedly dying to the bandit patrols nearby. So my mission would have to wait. I would come back stronger than ever. More resolute. I feared their judgment. Mostly their bullets, but also their judgment. I pressed my face against the enemy's car as a way to assert dominance. It was successful. A move so bold it struck terror into my own heart, but they held still long enough for my hologram to successfully dance battle them into submission. I made off like a bandit. You know, because the whole point of this mission is to make off like a bandit. I walked up to their door and demanded entry. A sparkly car, beautiful and bright. A declaration that I was their equal. Or maybe just... Oh, okay, they're lesser. It's alright, I really need in. If I could borrow the key, thank you. I bravely fought my way through the stronghold by repeatedly hiding my face. It was doing genuinely, really respectable damage, though. 15 seconds is a terrible time to kill basic enemies, but it's hard to argue with one-shotting most of them. By this point, I had a skill that finally gives me some form of health regen, and even movement speed buff whenever my action skill is going. It made getting through the ballroom a lot more palatable, but... Does anybody like this room? And if you just said yes, have you had a psychological evaluation done recently? Alright, Roland, I finally found you. Now we need to talk.
This'll just take a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry to bother you. Oh, damn it, now he's leaving! I was in hot pursuit. The added benefit of my skill being my main tool was that it was even easier to slip by unnoticed through many enemy-infested areas.
Kill this constructor so we can get the hell out of here!
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. So I came back even stronger. My class mod gave me an additional 2 points into Unforeseen for a total of 7 out of 5. My damage was now monstrous, and I would destroy Roland's escape vehicle. Now he'll have to...
Meet me back at section.
Oh, okay. Hey, can we finally...
Handsome Jack is gonna kill us all unless you can stop him.
Okay. To wake up his compatriot, I used the age-old method of letting the local wildlife light itself on fire, because apparently ecology is a myth. I went to collect some things for a 13-year-old orphan who's been horribly traumatized. Upon collecting them, I elected to stand my ground. I would even fool her into thinking I left the building. Despite my invisibility, she could directly see me, which shook me to my core. I don't get paid nearly enough to fuck with wizards, man. I helped her to blow up a train, and I guess I'm here to pick up some candy for Roland's crew and the lady who keeps calling me. Just gotta beat up some guy who developed a horrible condition, followed by a degrading mental state, followed by his boss poisoning him. And honestly, that's some hefty damage you got right there. He can regenerate his shield rather effectively, and the surveyors fly a bit too high to do much against, but shield ain't all that resistant to shock, Wilhelm, old boy. I doth believe ye to be royally screwed. Yeah, not even close. I once again went to drop off candy, but y'all should know, Jack has had a long day. Like, a really long day. He was headed home from work, and I heard him saying the one thing he was looking forward to was...
Let's kill ourselves some vault hunters.
Yeah, this might have been a bad idea. I think you made him mad. Luckily, we were able to teleport the city to safety. I don't think Jack saw that coming. You could say that this turn of events was unforeseen. The same lady calls me up again, telling me what to do after giving bad advice, and I should really stick up for myself. I ignored a lot of enemies, then more enemies. Did a snake eater, crossed a bridge, ignored an enemy, and fought a giant land octopus. And by fought, I mean I threw my hologram out a few times and mostly let it slap itself to death. Honestly, way easier than dealing damage manually. I covered this before, but by standing semi-close, you can bait it into dealing, well, probably worse DPS than a normal build can do, but still, pretty reasonable damage given how much most enemies do to themselves. I was told to fight a horde. I briefly considered doing it, but then I figured I'd mull it over at a local bar. Several times later, and the issue resolved itself. After sort of just procrastinating on the problem, they stopped asking me to handle it. But I hadn't really faced anyone. I hadn't fixed anything. I can't keep putting on a brave face. I need to actually face these things head on. Roland,
You? Damn it, we told you never to contact us again.
Oh. Well, okay, if that's how you feel, then I'll see myself out. Despite his treatment of me, his compatriot still needs help. He's a hunter by trade and found a giant target that he wants brought down. Sounds outside my expertise, but how can I say no? I started by killing a ton of loaders because I do too much damage to simply wound them. I'm used to ignoring enemies in the preserve, but I'd like to put a finer point on that the movement speed increase and added distraction just made general life a lot better. Got through to the next mandatory combat without issue. There, I let the loaders handle the stalkers because I didn't want to even imagine trying to get the stalkers to stand still. After, I realized that you basically just need to kill the badass stalker to spawn the super badass loader to proceed. The other loaders appear to be optional because there were a lot left when it showed up. I didn't really think that far ahead. I was able to whittle down their numbers until there was just the big slow bot to manage. And they're certainly imposing when they have support, but action economy and all that. I had to deal with various skags in the next area, and some of them are really hard to hold in place. The majority of them will rush my hologram, but you have to place it extremely carefully when trying to kill things like spitters, alphas, and any of the badass skags that I had the displeasure of being faced with. It went by slowly, but it went by, and I was able to carry on. Next up, it was duck season, and this thing sure looks close enough. Or more accurately, I can only attack it when it's close enough. To be precise, I can only even somewhat consistently hit the bird when it lands to fight me on the ground. Like throw out one hologram per landing. You can just barely get another one in sometimes if you have it out as the bird is coming down in conjunction with a spy class mod to increase the rate that your action skill comes back. Every second counts. Unfortunately for me, I had to choose between a class mod that would give me a 10% better cooldown or +2 to Unforeseen. Couldn't have both. Now, she doesn't land particularly often, but I can chunk her for a lot of damage when she does. Until phase 2. Yeah, this took a lot of hits. And I would sit waiting for ages for her to land again, so I could realistically only hit her once before going back to waiting. It was an incredibly dull cycle. Unsurprisingly, the most dangerous thing in the area is pretty much always the skags that she buffs. For those that somehow still don't know, you can essentially stop her from being able to target you by repeatedly jumping. You have to time it so you're always coming back up right as soon as you land. It works against a lot of melee enemies as well. Not sure why it messes with the AI, but it's a nice thing to have in your back pocket. Just remember to time your volts. That being said, barf skags are generally really dangerous with the shock buff, and the damage they deal is what you should be afraid of. After a while, she refuses to land at all. The fight couldn't progress as her health bar became static. The only other thing that I could think to do was just hope. She had a melee attack that requires her to dive to hit you. Realistically, it's the only other attack that keeps her in range for even a moment. She has a handful of attacks she'll do, she comes and goes at different altitudes, and often won't come near you even when doing her dives. So, I had to hope that she would do the right attack at the right time at the right height. I had to make guesses as to where the bird would be 6 seconds from now in a 3-dimensional space with seemingly completely random attack patterns and locations that those would take her. I ended up dying to the fight a few times because this boss is grueling and I'm not perfect. After not being able to hit her a single time in almost half an hour, I took it as a sign that I should go spend my time elsewhere. Maybe some extra levels would help to take the edge off this RNG fest. If you look right there, real close, you can see when I finally managed to get it lucky enough to make contact. I didn't get footage of the lead up because I have a limited amount of hard drive space and it took a while. After the phase transition, she went back to functioning normally, and even landing. Crazy thought. Landing. About goddamn time! Took one hit to finish her last phase, Morty shot her, and we have enough meat to last 3 winters.
No!
Wait, that was your friend?
I'm gonna kill you! You hear me?
Well, I'm just not getting anything right today, am I? After successfully pissing off another potential friend, I decided to stop back in with Claptrap. Maybe I still have a chance to have some kind of relationship. I'm just so lonely. I upgraded him so he could be invisible with me. We could escape together, and I couldn't high-five him, but together we could dance. Celebrate our mutual bond. Is this what it's like? To know of someone's platonic love? To feel someone emotionally close to you? Someone who cares? Is this friendship? I must recruit more. Form a band of compatriots of my own. I heard of another, a man of massive hulking muscles. Exiled by Roland and a kindred heart. A leader in his own right, he was surrounded by people. An intimidating prospect to be sure, but emboldened by Claptrap, I decided to take a different approach. I would sneak in and dispose of his guards. They were almost lifeless husks of people. They made no attempt to combat me. I made a show of confidence by claiming his seat in a jovial fashion. Friends are known to jest with each other, after all. I continued disposing of his other associates. Though they shared the same building, they clearly weren't comfortable here. They wouldn't follow me to the back of this place, where I laid in wait between attacks. I would pick them off, until only his true friends remained here. Also, I'm not sure what this guy was doing, but it kinda weirded me out. I don't even use guns, and I can tell you, that is not how you hold them. Due to the aggressive nature of the people here, I was able to get a few multi-kills in that were pretty satisfying to see. It's not often that my challenge builds get to do anything impressive, so I'll take them when I can see them. Finally able to come through in a long-standing Borderlands tradition, the sarcastic slob was slain, and I was able to sneak a note into Brick's hand. It detailed a question to which I needed an answer. Do you like me? It contained 3 answers. Yes. Definitely. Absolutely. I rigged it. He had no choice but to join me. Jack, obviously jealous of my ever-expanding friend group, tried to get between us. I underestimated just how loyal Brick would prove to be, and in an unforeseen turn of events, I actually did my best to help him clear the loaders out of his path. One by one, we disabled the beacons in the area. I was able to even contribute to their destruction. Feels like lifetimes ago that I was able to do such a thing. The strange woman called me once more, making demands. Perhaps I could recruit her too. I would travel to the City of Opportunity at her demand, or request. Maybe the location name was fitting. A chance to expand my wings. Stand stronger among my compatriots. Roland's bully, Jack, had a cardboard cutout here. It quickly folded, but worked as a form of exposure therapy. Practice standing up to someone that stands even above those that tower over me. I was tasked with studying his methods, his mannerisms, his deliveries. I worked to become something else. The man who would be Jack. Or even better, I would be the Zero who would be even greater than he. I caught word that Roland was headed by Thousand Cuts. I had to confront him. Claptrap helped me by lowering the entry gate, and I ran through, briefly forgetting which run I was doing. I caused the constructor to face the wrong direction, and soon paid with my hypothetical life. I reloaded the area, keeping in mind my own mortality this time, and used my usual hiding place to receive a sort of reassurance between attacks. Constructors are hardy, but I've only grown more resilient. Some random guys chewed up my health, but my feet are swift. I've never actually paid attention to where the mortars came from, so I was surprised to see them coming from the wall. And I have to ask, what projects the targeting circles for mortars that are firing from so damn close? Why would you do that in general? It just seems like a bad idea if you're trying to actually hit something. Next were the dreaded turrets, and yeah, I don't think I can even get my projection close enough. I'm assuming they're immune, but even if they weren't, I think I'd be screwed here. Luckily, I totally used Unforeseen. It was definitely the hologram that got him. As always, I ran straight to the back of the area, where I would find the healthiest son of a gun in the area. Or maybe the son of a printer. Tank? I'm not really sure what kind of machine. Come to think of it, I don't even know if it's a son. It could be a daughter. It could be non-binary. I don't really know how it identifies, or if it even does. If the pre-sequel is to be believed, the AI has been stripped of most of its agency, but it's theoretically capable of emulating a person. God, the pre-sequel is dark. Anyways, good news. This is the first time in a long time that I killed it myself. I mean, I stayed behind it so it couldn't hit me, but it didn't get a single self-hit in. It was all me. All my damage. I'm taking a more active role in my life. Next up were a bunch of turrets. Luckily, I've spent several hours here, so I have a pretty good understanding of how to reach things. There were a couple of weird ones to get to, like this one here. My previous sort of pacifist runs helped a lot. Then there was this one. Similar story. Finally, the most difficult turret. To get it, I needed to only plunge myself to the depths below, killing myself instantly. And coming back because gameplay. It took me 2 attempts, but I got it in the end. Then came the doorkeeper. Weird that the robot stationed here specifically to defend the place would spend so much time shooting it with various forms of weaponry, including but not limited to explosives. Also, its aim sucks. It's probably doing a lot more damage to this place than I ever could. Full disclosure, I was dreading this fight since before the run even started. I wasn't sure if I'd have the range. My shield run had given me some hope and training, but the range on Unforeseen is significantly smaller than most Nova shields. So I wasn't really sure, but just like that, I'd proven that it could maybe be done. Similarly to said run, I had extremely limited openings where I could hit the boss. There were only really a couple of spots it would position itself that I could hit it. One of them, it would wander forward and back, meaning I'd have to be extremely careful to time when I threw out my hologram. Similarly, I had to be careful not to fly too close to the sun. If you look ever so carefully, you'll see a number greater than myself. But more so, my failure made numerical. It was so small, and yet so vast. So much more than I was allowed to do within the rules of the run. So, I had to begin again. Had I waited just a moment longer, I would have had a much better opportunity to strike. As long as I don't plunge myself off the map, or allow myself to be plunged. It does have a couple points that aren't just consistent, but easy to hit. It would be my best chance of getting through this in an even somewhat timely manner. I had hours of practice. I dare say, I fought the bunker in a single attempt longer than most of the community. Probably because they're better at the game, but that's beside the point. I was ready. Determined. Hours devoted to this metal monstrosity culminated in a careful and calculated execution of the skills I'd built up. Though there were times I was unable to jump. I have little time on Zero when compared to other Vault Hunters. And while many have this issue, I choose to attribute it to him, because it's not usually a problem with them. You can't jump while in the air, a fact that remains true for most living beings. But Borderlands 2 sometimes doesn't let you jump when you're shot. While I don't know for sure, I suspect that the reason is that the bullets have moved you enough to not be in direct contact with the ground. Similarly, you can't always open your inventory when being shot. It's meant to add some weight to the game, and it accomplishes it well, unless you need a very specific jump timing. Krieg is bigger, heavier, a weightier fellow who's made intentionally so, because melee combat sucks when you're being thrown around like a paper plane, beholden even to the ambient air. He's a girthier unit of a man, and a character I love to play. Honestly, what's even the point of Melee Zero when Krieg exists? Sure, he's more dexterous, but who needs dexterity when you've got strength? I dare say that it's just a lot more radical. Sick and cool, as the youth are prone to saying. Maybe even, quite possibly, lit fam. In its final phase, the bunker places itself high in the air, far out of reach of my measly projection, and this is where I had to do something I didn't want to. I had hoped for a cleaner run, wanted for it desperately, but as far as I can tell, you just can't reach it to deal damage from any angle. So I tossed a single grenade at my own feet. It gave me enough height to reach the raised platform where I stood and fought. It is theoretically possible that an enemy grenade could end up here. I'm not sure if it could send you high enough. I'm also fairly sure you'd have to do so before the phase transition, because they basically won't target you at all once you're in this phase. This is to say, it's maybe doable without a grenade jump, but I'm not gonna wait and try. I've got things to do with my life that don't fall into the realm of waiting on RNG for the bunker fight. Other goals, aspirations. Anyways, I would continue onward with almost a swagger, emboldened and undeterred. I wouldn't even bother using the elevator. It really wasn't the cleanest skip, but it didn't have to be. For it was a skip in my step, a song in my heart, a smile upon my face. Also, I just really enjoy doing the elevator skip. I made my way to meet the lady that kept calling me, and she's apparently been imprisoned. If I break her out, maybe I'll finally have another recruit. I got to work eliminating the nearby guards, the worst of which were the ion loaders. Shocking nobody, an armored enemy with additional resistances to my only type of damage made for a resilient foe. And yes, I make the shock joke every time. And no, I'm not gonna stop doing it. Not even necessarily willfully. I write my scripts and I only notice it when I'm reading them off. It's the joke that haunts me like a ghoul in the night, lurking behind every corner, just waiting to be made. I can't escape it. And neither can you! Boo! No, but Control Core Angel took a healthy chunk of time. Long enough at least that I had the bug where you can't break the pipes with melee, and there's no way in hell I was reaching it with my hologram. So I used grenades because landing them up there solves the issue pretty effectively. You'd be surprised to see how many ion loaders spawned in. I worked on the loaders for a while, hiding behind some broken field generators. It was the only way to avoid the turret damage because they kill me quickly and I can't break them. This continued for a while until the bastard of the hour showed up. He's apparently here because he wanted to stand up to Jack.
What the hell? I told you not to come!
Yeah, about that.
We gotta move!
Well, I wanted to...
Open fire!
Fine. So he kept barking orders at me to break the pipes, but I put my foot down. I waited for him to break every turret first. While he worked, I broke the other field generators to give myself some better places to stand and more cover from the turrets that would inevitably spawn in. Some lady showed up. I don't really remember her. I can't imagine she's all that important to the events of the series. I was eventually able to lower the shield surrounding this lady, and I've never really thought about it, but why is the shield that deflects bullets directly linked to the tubes attached to her life support? I guess maybe as a failsafe to provide support after the fact, but it seems like a weird choice. I mean, oh no, she died. I only knew manipulative friend. Yeah, not a huge loss. Anyways, I've been waiting for ages now. I've worked long and hard for this moment. Roland, You robbed me of my only chance to stand up to him. You stole that from me.
Kill the Vault Hunter.
Jesus, man, I was just trying to... Just calm down for a minute. We can talk about this.
First Bloodwing, now this?
Listen, this wasn't my fault. Is there any way I can help to settle things between us?
You just need to find out where this warrior is buried.
Alright, I'm on it. If it means more friends, I can handle it. I wasn't sure where to start, so I started in the Iridium Blight.
My boys can blast open the path to the info stockade.
Well, I'll take it. He's never steered me wrong before. I was on my way through the area where I used my favorite elevator to protect me from... everything. It's a good elevator, alright? With my mood elevated, I went to cause some random destruction to get the locals moving, on Brick's request. I was feeling unsure of whether or not I did it right, but I managed to look away in time to impress Brick. Next up was the other part of the run that I was dreading, and I was dreading it hard. I spent a long while testing different methods. I tried going low, I tried going high, I tried getting them as they were spawning in. It got bad enough that I even tried to trigger it early by way of shooting, something that I hadn't done before, something that I didn't do after. And as far as I can tell, buzzards are straight up immune to Unforeseen. So that's it. That's where the run dies. Unless of course my visions of grandeur could be more flexible. Take a different form. What if... Yeah, that looks like Zero to me. What, you don't think so? How would you even know? Nobody's seen his face. Look, there I am deploying my hologram. It's even dealing shock damage. This is all perfectly ordinary Zero activity. Perfectly normal. There's nothing unusual going on here at all. Luckily, my duration lasted long enough to defeat all 5 buzzards before my hologram despawned. See? Sparks and everything. Definitely unforeseen. Anyways, I picked up some stuff for Brick and made my way to drop it off for him. It may have amounted to running errands, but he still got me going in a better direction than I was going to choose. They had me go around doing service work to open a path through a big pipe. Honestly, this is always easy. It's even easier with Zero. I ran through to the next area where I would ignore Saturn. I don't want to fight it, and there's something really important that you should know. You can't make me! The speed boost I got propelled me forward even better than usual. This would be easier than any run I've done on the channel. Or so I thought. My greed got called out. I had to have the stuff. The beautiful stuff. And it killed me. So I ran through it again, doing the same thing. This time, not dying. Grabbing the map and squaring things away with Mordecai. Claptrap and I made our way to Hero's Pass so I could face Jack. If I couldn't face Roland, I'd have to face the next best, or worst, person? Whatever the case. To get to him, I would have to fight through a bunch of robots again. Despite having similar levels, I did genuinely pretty respectable damage. Along the way, I picked up a class mod with an 11% increase in my cooldown rate and a +3 to Unforeseen. The best of both worlds. When the turrets came out, we didn't see eye to eye. Possibly because you can't see Zero's eyes. But Claptrap was able to convince them. I was desperate to cling on to my new friends, leaping in front of bullets to try to protect them, but to no avail. They helped me gratefully, but left me with multiple surveyors to contend with. Luckily, my recompense run taught me a valuable lesson regarding them. If you stand directly under them, they'll sometimes just sit there, menacingly, giving me ample opportunity to destroy them. The bigger loaders went down after repeated blasts, and we were able to get the doors open. You've been with me every step of the way, buddy, and Oh, I'm sorry. Know this, Claptrap. I take this march not without you, but for you. Every step, every push forward I do with you in mind, my friend. You may not be with me in circuit, but in my heart, you'll be with me until long after this journey's end. We can do this. I ran to meet up with my second closest friend. He did his best to get us through, and what was truly unforeseen was me helping during this portion. Nah, I'm just kidding. Do you see how many dudes here have rocket launchers? I ended up waiting for a pretty good portion of this because I was getting a ton of RPG loaders, hawks, and this could have gone a lot better. You see what I did there? It was a deception. Get it? Because his action skill is called deception. I continued onward where... Are you serious? Are you serious? I continued onward where I slipped past all of the enemies without any issues whatsoever. None to be heard of. Things went smoothly and I was able to carry on with my life. You asshole! I finally met up with Jack, the big bully himself. And I'm gonna stand up for what is right. You've pushed people around for too long, and I'm gonna put a stop to it. He's extremely mobile, and like most small people, not physically small, but like as a person, emotionally, socially, terrible person, I mean. Anyways, like most douchebags, he had a crew to back him up, because he was terrified of facing the consequences of his actions alone. He's mobile enough that I figured he might flee at the first sign of a threat, and I was sort of right. But his aggression got the better of him. He couldn't help himself. He had to stay and try to hurt me physically and emotionally. He was quaking in his boots at my approach, and that's when I knew. Through all of this, I was envisioning myself succeeding. It was carrying me through. That belief in myself that some version of me was good enough. But it was me the whole time. I was the one accomplishing the things I set out to do. I could take the world out with my friends by my side. There was nothing left to be afraid of. Except when Jack called in his older brother to beat me up. I've got to question the family tree here. He was big, scary, but I could do it. Same as before. Well, that could certainly stand to do more damage, but I was undeterred. It did force me to reset a few times by causing me to bounce off of him, dealing some damage. But all the same, I used my safety rock to stay far from the foe, only leaving to drop deliveries of high-grade me-explosives, and retreated to wait for it to reset. I could only reliably hit the boss in this spot, and this spot. This one being significantly less reliable, as it's prone to lifting its arms just before detonation. It can be timed better by waiting for a little bit before sending out the hologram, but that runs the risk of being killed. Not exactly tanky. Over here, the best method is to throw it out and run right away. In either case, it'll prioritize melee attacks, because it thinks I'm still next to it. And it's not fast, not by any stretch of the imagination. Especially when it just sits at the other side of the arena, because it knows I can't touch it. But with patience, dedication, and the confidence in my abilities required, I brought down the last that Pandora had to offer. What about the side quests and the DLC? Shh. All that Pandora has to offer. And finally, our hero, with his friends, can graduate. From zero to a confident zero. What? I still don't know his actual name. In any case, I hope you enjoyed your time here. You probably know how to use social media, and I hope that means you'll get to hear your thoughts now and on any future outings. Until then, remember to stay safe, spread some kindness to the world, don't go selling yourself short. You're worth more than that. And I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.